No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Those who stay will be champions. That was the motto of Bo Schembechler, who coached Michigan from 1969 to 1989. And technically, Bo wasn't wrong, but only about a certain kind of championship. In his 21 seasons, Bo won 13 conference titles, which was 12 more than U of M won the 18 years prior to his arrival. Schembechler was extremely impressive as a coach. His teams finished in the top 10 a whopping 16 times. Meanwhile, Woody Hayes had only 15 top 10 finishes. Yet when talking about the greatest coaches of all time, Bo is often left out of the conversation with Nick Saban, Bear Bryant, Fielding Yost, and some of the other greats. And why? Well, the answer is very simple. Bo never won a national championship. And while the trophy was not as objective back then, it's well agreed that none of Bo's teams deserved the trophy. Which is crazy, considering that 5 of his teams finished in the top 4. That would have been nice in today's day and age. Anyhow, so why was Mr. Schembechler unable to win the national championship? Well, there's some obvious reasons. Many people point to his 5-12 bowl record, which kept him from getting consideration from the AP. There was also his inability to innovate the offense, which cost the Wolverines in several games against sexier offenses, like the O.J. Simpson-led Trojans or the Bo Jackson-led Tigers. But here's one no one considers: special teams. I dug back into the books, where special teams cost Bo an opportunity at 6 potential national championships. On paper, Schembechler's teams matched up well with anyone, despite consistently playing teams like Notre Dame, Miami, Florida, Ohio State, and USC. Bo lost just 3 games by 17 or more points in his entire 21-year career. So, in the majority of his losses, points were paramount, and special teams errors were even more costly. Here's some examples. The first year we're going to look at is 1973. Michigan and Ohio State meet for one of the most memorable games in college football history. Both teams entered the game 10-0, with Ohio State ranked 1st, Michigan ranked 4th. I can make a whole video about this game, but we'll save that for another time. Anyhow, the winner of this game was going to the Rose Bowl with the opportunity to win the national championship. The Wolverines were in perfect position. The score tied at 10, 52 seconds left. Michigan intercepted a pass and returned it to the OSU 33. U of M was able to move the ball to the 28 with 28 seconds left to give kicker Mike Lantry a makeable 45-yard field goal. The kick was close, but it sailed wide past the upright. The game ended in a 10-10 tie. We'll get into the post-game controversy in another video. The main point: a missed field goal cost Michigan a trip to the Rose Bowl. And the irony is, even though both OSU and Michigan finished unbeaten, neither got into the national title. This is likely the best argument a Bo team had at a national championship. But if the field goal is hit, this what-if game is put to bed. A year later, Michigan found itself in a similar situation. Going into the OSU game, Michigan was 10-0, ranked 2nd in the country. And again, the Wolverines were in prime position to win the game. Down 12-10, Michigan had the ball at the OSU 15 with 18 seconds left. A field goal sets U of M up with a date with USC in the Rose Bowl, a game U of M matched up very well in. Instead, the kick sailed, and U of M again lost a great opportunity at the national title. Now, before I move onward, Mike Lantry was an excellent kicker and, more importantly, an excellent person. Lantry served in the Army and even a few years in the Vietnam War. I hate to make this a video bashing him, because this would not be fair. He was an All-American kicker at U of M who actually broke the school record for longest field goal twice in one game, even after 2 costly misses. I'm glad to see Lantry doing great things in life. It's a lesson that it's just a game, and there are more important things to remember people by. Instead, we'll get into Bo Schembechler's inability to make special teams a point of emphasis. As good as Lantry was, he was a walk-on who was a simple enrollee. He was not recruited. We're going to see later that Bo's lack of attention on kickers continued to cost his team. Also, it's worth mentioning, Lantry was a toe kicker, which was common back in the 70s. This affected kicking accuracy, which is why the soccer style of kicking is the default today. Anyhow, let's move on. 1976. Michigan goes into West Lafayette, Indiana, as number 1, taking on Purdue as a heavy favorite. The 8-0 Wolverines were likely looking ahead to Ohio State, and found themselves trailing 14-6 late. However, Michigan again had an opportunity to win with a chip shot field goal with 9 seconds left. Kicker Bobby Wood just needed a 37-yarder to avoid the upset from the Spoilermakers. However, the kick sailed left, and Michigan essentially lost an opportunity to play for a national championship. Now, in retrospect, it's not known if U of M would have won the title had Wood hit the field goal. The Wolverines did lose the Rose Bowl to USC 14-6. However, the game ended up being meaningless, as the 12-0 Pittsburgh Panthers won the national title. Had U of M gone into the game 11-0, the stakes would have been a lot different, and who knows if the outcome would have been as well. The next example involves Michigan's special teams as a whole, and this covers an entire season. 10 years into his U of M career, Schembechler had no seasons with 3 or more losses. The 1979 season unfortunately ended that streak, and it could be blamed on one group: special teams. In 3 of the 4 losses, Michigan made critical errors that cost them close games. Against Notre Dame, Week 2, Brian Virgil has an opportunity to win the game late. With 6 seconds left, Virgil needed to hit a 42-yarder to give the Wolverines a 1-point win. Instead, the kick was blocked, and Notre Dame held on 12-10. And the field goal kicking wasn't the only thing that was abysmal in that game. Virgil averaged just 29.7 yards per punt, which included a 5-yarder in the 4th. This is a game where Michigan outgained the Irish 306-179, but special teams blunders cost them the game. Unfortunately, this would be a trend for the rest of the season. 2 weeks later at Cal, Michigan missed 5 field goals in a 14-10 win. This led to a low point in Schembechler's career. U of M kickers were just 1 of 15 on the season, and frustration was starting to build. Bo was asked a very reasonable question by a student reporter. Dan Perrin asked Bo if he would put more emphasis on recruiting kickers. Bo was furious as he threw the microphone, grabbed Perrin by the throat, and shoved him. He said, "Don't try to make me look bad. You understand, son? Or I'll throw you the hell out of Michigan football." After this incident, it's obvious to see why Michigan had struggled on special teams. Bo never made a special effort to improve his special teams, and this would continue to cost him. 7 weeks later, the special teams cost the Wolverines again, this time against the Ohio State Buckeyes. With under 10 minutes left and a 15-12 lead, Virgil lined up to punt at the Michigan 18. It was blocked, returned for a touchdown, and the Wolverines dropped another winnable game, 18-15. And the bowl game against UNC was the icing on the cake to this frustrating season. Led by Lawrence Taylor, the Tar Heels were much better than their 7-3-1 record. This was a great battle, but you can probably guess what the deciding factor was. Special teams. Virgil missed an extra point, and the Wolverines trailed by 8 instead of 7 late in the game. As a result, U of M had to go for 2 late in the 4th with a few minutes left, which failed, and the Wolverines fell to North Carolina 17-15. It's really hard to grasp how frustrating that 79 season was. Michigan lost 4 games by a combined 10 points, 3 of those losses coming to top 10 teams, and 1 coming to a team with the best player in NFL history. The Wolverines went 4 for 19 on field goals that year. 4 for 19! Without question, this was a team that had the talent to win the national championship, if only they addressed the special teams. And unfortunately, the problems continued later in Bo's career. Let's fast forward to 1988. That team started 0-2. But don't let that fool you. That team was arguably the best 0-2 team in college football history. Because those 2 losses were to the team that won the national title and the team that finished right behind them, this was a pretty good roster. Michigan faced Notre Dame to start the season on the road at the eventual national champion. Trailing 19-17, Michigan moved down to the Irish 31 with just 3 seconds left. U of M had a chance to win with a 48-yarder, but again, it sailed wide, and the Irish's road to the championship started there. It's also worth mentioning that the Wolverines gave up an 81-yard punt return, which supports the narrative that Bo's special teams were a problem. That will be relevant later on. As for the second loss, the Wolverines hosted the top-ranked Miami Hurricanes in one of the most heartbreaking losses in Michigan football history. The Wolverines had a 30-14 lead late in the 4th, but Miami stormed back. The Canes got the game to 30-28 with about 3 minutes left. the Wolverines needed a long drive to run out the clock. Unfortunately, after the Canes recovered the ensuing onside kick, the U of M offense was never given that chance. Most of the Wolverines stood there and watched Bobby Harden recover the ball, and the Canes marched down the field and won off a 29-yard kick. Michigan should have beaten two of the best teams in college football, but again, special teams was the difference between 2-0 and 0-2. And unfortunately, in retrospect, with Michigan finishing 9-2-1, this cost the Maize and Blue a national championship. Why is it that when we win the Rose Bowl, it's never for the grand prize? Anyhow, last example. The 1989 season was Bo's final season, and it was another woulda, coulda, shoulda season. Remember how I mentioned the year prior, Notre Dame had an 81-yard punt return touchdown? Well, Bo's paltry kick coverage was an even bigger issue in the 89 game. To start the season, the second-ranked Wolverines took on the top-ranked Irish in one of the most highly anticipated season openers in college football history. The Wolverines' defense was dominant. They allowed just one defensive touchdown, as the Irish attempted only 2 passes for the entire game. Michigan outgained Notre Dame 272-219, but you can probably guess the difference maker. Again, special teams. Rocket Ismail returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns to give Lou Holtz's team a couple of scores. That was enough for the Irish to prevail 24-19. And of course, the Wolverines win their next 10 and rank number 3 before going into USC and losing a controversial game. But still, had U of M beaten Notre Dame, Michigan could have made a great case at the end of the season to share the national championship with Miami. Amazing how it always worked out that way, eh? So throughout Schembechler's 2 decades as a coach, his inability to address special teams cost him dearly. His outburst in '79 showed that he did not put emphasis on recruiting place kickers, and his lack of attention to kick coverage was exposed by the speedier teams. And really, I think it's a tragedy, because had Bo won a pair of national championships, he'd be in that conversation as one of the best coaches in college football history. Unfortunately, it's become a meme. Many pundits use Bo's lack of hardware as an excuse to dismiss Michigan as a nationally relevant program. But the truth is, Michigan was able to get a claw on the grand trophy. They just never got their entire hands to grasp it. Bo's teams were never out of any game. Again, like I said earlier in the video, despite consistently playing powerhouses, Bo only lost 3 games by 17 or more in his entire career. So capability clearly wasn't the issue. But what does any of this have to do with Jim Harbaugh? After all, it took Jim 6 years to do what Bo did in his first year. So why do I believe Harbaugh can bring home the national championship trophy? Special teams. Those 2 words are what ruined Schembechler's career, and ironically, saved Jim Harbaugh's. Jim puts a lot of enthusiasm into special teams, both recruiting and coaching. Bo never went out of his way to recruit a kicker, which likely cost him 2 to 3 Rose Bowls in the 1970s. The outburst after the '79 Cal game displayed that perfectly. Meanwhile, Harbaugh has gone out of his way to make sure the kicking game is on point. He slept at Quinn Nordine's house in 2016, if y'all remember, to land the 5-star kicker. Despite some inconsistencies, Nordine was a successful kicker at Michigan, and Harbaugh's effort paid dividends. Also, recruiting Jake Moody has paid dividends. In a season full of close games, Moody went 23 for 25 to win the Lou Garza Award. But beyond just the kicking, Michigan special teams have excelled elsewhere. Wolverines blocked 7 kicks and didn't allow a blocked kick all season. Brad Robbins was 6th in net punting, and the punt team allowed just 35 return yards all season. According to FEI, Michigan had the #1 special teams unit in the country. It's all thanks to the best special teams coordinator in the country, Mr. Harbaugh. No, not Jim, but his son, Jay. Jim did a great job finding a spot his son could excel at. The schemes, fundamentals, and execution of Bo's special teams pale in comparison to Harbaugh's. Jim gets a lot of talent and develops them, as proven by the recent results in the NFL draft. Like Bo, Jim will find himself in a lot of close games. When the Wolverines get back to the big stage, which I believe they will, points will be precious, and Harbaugh's emphasis on his special teams will pay dividends and hopefully bring home the CFP trophy.